Hi everyone, and a warm welcome back to my channel. My name's Nick Jones and I work as a full-time dog behaviourist. On this case, in this video, I would like to talk to you about a dog that I saw with the family. This is a Skye Terrier. Now, must confess, I meant to have a quick look on Google to see what the numbers are like now in the UK, but this is a breed, I believe, which is on the endangered list, in the sense of its numbers at least. So this dog is a very nice dog. However, he was doing some slightly naughty things in the house. What was he doing, you ask? Well, he was having a particular problem with the young teenage male in the household. Now, this is a small family, mum, dad, and one lad, and the boy is 14 years of age. What was the dog doing? The dog was growling at the young lad when he was coming into the room in the evening, either to eat with the rest of the family or just to spend an hour before bed, that type of thing. The dog was seeing this young man as a potential challenge to the little cozy trio that it was enjoying for the best part in the living room with an open fireplace and the TV. Not a big room, but mum and dad were in there with the dog. And of course, when the son was wishing to enter, the dog was, I say of course, because it's not necessarily behaviour we expect, but what the dog was doing was growling and grumbling at the boy, obviously making him feel quite uncomfortable. This same behaviour was happening to other members of the family as well, albeit in lesser amounts and less frequent, but it was still there. So one way or another, the whole family were seeing a degree of unwanted behaviour from this lovely Skye Terrier. I have taken some photos and videos, so I'll drop those in throughout this video for you to gain a bit more context. Now, today was the return visit. So as you may know from previous visits, I like to provide people with 2 behaviour visits to the home. Now, I've done all sorts of numbers over the years. I've done 1, I've done 3, but I found that 2 is the sweet spot. 1 I often find could be enough, but in some more complicated cases, and I'm often looking at those, I find it's not enough. It's not enough for me, by the way, which I need to take into account, because how do I reconcile that job in my mind? If I think about that situation and the dog and the owner, do I know that it was left happy, safe, and that they're all well equipped to carry on into the future? And of course, I wouldn't know that with a single visit. So 2 visits is what I offer. Now, as you may also know, the passion for me in my work is working with families in a domestic setting and looking at pet dogs in a pet dog setting. So the sorts of behaviours we can encounter in a pet dog setup can vary wildly, from within the home all the way through to behaviours the dog may be practicing out of the home. Okay. Now, in some respects, this case was, for me, a little bit more straightforward, because rather than having a very large open pool of behaviours that we're trying to address, actually, it was coming right down into the point of a narrow point where we could establish what those issues were, when they're happening, and we also had a good idea as to why they were happening. So then it just allowed me to provide the family with 3 or 4 main ideas. Now, let me see if I can get these off the top of my head without checking my notes. In particular, I wanted the young man to present himself to the dog in such a way that the dog saw him as certainly not a threat, definitely as a person of interest, and that could be bringing nice things. Okay, and when we change the dog's perception of a person in the family, it can often make a big difference. Okay, so what we were looking at was increasing the times when the young boy was feeding the dog. So introducing the concept of feeding made a big difference. We also had a concept whereby each time the boy entered the room, he would be directing the dog onto a bed and then giving a treat, rather than coming into the room, being grumbled at, and then feeling his way around the edges of the walls before he could get to the sofa, and then, of course, feel not comfortable in that situation. And neither should the dog be practicing that sort of behaviour. Okay, so we were able to change the way the dog perceived his entry into the room as well, which also made a big difference. We also were advocating that the lad join the parents on dog walks, so that the dog was seeing the boy as a more positive and involved part of the family in that respect. And finally, we also got the boy to start doing some very simple and light, fun training with the dog in the garden, out on walks, that sort of thing. So we're getting the dog used to looking for direction from the boy. And all of these facts together really made a helpful difference. Now, you may also know, if you've seen other videos, especially about return visits, that I like to ask the owners what they felt the change has been from in the sense of a starting point and a where are we today point. And with 10 being excellent and 0 being not so good, today's score went from -0, which that's pretty bad, isn't it? To a plus 7.5. How good is that? 7.5, 7.5 out of 10 mark improvement. I don't think I'm not sure if I've had a 0 to 10, but it's going to happen one day, isn't it? What do we do with a 7.5? Because that's so good, it's so positive, but of course, where does it sit in relation to the 10? Well, we know, of course, it's 2.5 marks off that. Don't forget, this is just a bit of a finger in the wind type of observation as to the dog's behaviour and its improvements, okay? So we have 2.5 marks to go to the 10. We discussed, well, is a dog ever at a 10? You know, a 9 point something is pretty good. So don't expect too much from your dog. And remember that here we are talking about our pet dogs. So our expectations are being filtered through that fact. Okay. So I think with time, our discussion went that with time and continued practice and maintenance of what's been achieved so far, that certainly give it a couple more months, then we'll be in the 9 point somethings. So I made a couple of notes here, which were direct from the conversation. Pluses that positives that the owner felt specifically after the first visit. Well, we also implemented the attention diet on this dog, and the owners said, to quote, that they felt bad doing it. Remember, this is just ignoring your dog. You're not doing anything to it. But they also felt that it helped ground and settle the dog, which of course is such a big deal. We want our dogs to be grounded and settled, don't we? We also used a lead on in the house, which I call a house lead or house line. The dog dragged that around for a few weeks, okay? And that gave the owners also a great deal more confidence and ability to step on that line if the dog was doing something untoward, and then to lift it and then use it to take the dog to a different location. We also had a little plan of, the question was that I presented, what do you do when the dog is being, starts to get on the ladder of get my teeth in, the ladder of aggression, because of course it does escalate, it goes up, doesn't it? If it's unaddressed, what we want to do is not to cause a stir when it happens, but to be able to calmly, quickly step into the breach, if you like, and to remove the dog from the situation. Those are timeouts. They're not used all of the time, but quite they're not unusual to use them. What's the benefit of a timeout, and how do we do it quickly? Well, we lift the dog's lead, we walk the dog out of the room and shut the dog out of the room for, let's say, up to 60 seconds. The dog, after that period, the door is opened. We look at the dog. If the dog's looking all happy and waggy-tailed and looks evidently like it made a mistake type of thing, then we can lift the lead and walk the dog back into the room, and we start again, in essence. But if the dog is still showing ongoing signs of that poor behaviour, that's very unusual, by the way, or not common. But then we would just say, okay, suit yourself, you can stay there for another 60 seconds. Remember, what's happening with the dog, in essence, is nothing. It's all about a removal of what the dog loves and likes and perceives that it needs, such as the looking, the touching, and the talking. Okay, and when, of course, we remove those elements for a set period of time in a controlled, thoughtful way, I hasten to add, the dogs are very often on the back foot, so to speak, and they find that their previous little plan of controlling others becomes not so effective. We could also say that this behaviour is of the ilk. I'm a bit wary of descriptive words within the profession, but we could say that this is a more domineering, dominant, male-led, canine male-led behaviour. 70 to 80% of the dogs I see for this type of behaviour and aggressive behaviour per se are male. That's quite a statistic, I think. Of course, if it was 50-50, well, there wouldn't be anything in it, would there? But 70 to 80% of this sort of behaviour coming from male dogs is not coincidental. So we know also it's a behaviour that's being fueled by that dog's maleness. He could be looking almost literally around the home to see who's managing me, who's in control. There was a little line offered today that I think really, yeah, the lady owner said that she felt that the dog really appreciated them taking control. Only taking control in the ways that I'm discussing with you this morning, but nonetheless taking control. That means, of course, we're taking away from the dog certain practices and routines that it thought that were previously acceptable. And of course, through my conversation with the owners, we're really saying, well, what isn't acceptable, which is not normally difficult to agree, but the important thing is, what do we do when it happens? What can we do also away from those occurrences to help deter them in the future? And again, that the answers to that are all the points that I'm relaying to you now. They definitely felt that the dog was more chilled as a result. And by the way, I could see that. Now, when I came to the house on the first visit, the dog was not on the lead, as I normally ask. At least I'm pretty sure that was the case. And the dog was able to engage in some behaviours that were a bit pushy towards me as a visitor. No aggression, nothing of that nature, but the control wasn't there. Today on the return visit, I went back, the lady owner had him on a lead. She was being quietly but nicely bossy with him. He was trying to, no aggression in him whatsoever this morning, but he was being a bit willful, trying to come into my space and invade it rather than just come in politely and have a little hello, who are you? So the lady owner looked and felt and sounded so much more confident, and she expressed this herself. And of course, when a dog starts to see an owner that is calm, confident, in control of the situation, not just there and then with that visitor, but across all areas. I was talking just as I stood inside the house because that door and that calmness was evident, the doorway control. That then the owner carries that, they get it in their heart and their heads, and they think, yeah, I like this. This is much better. I feel more in control of my dog. But that's not a surprise to me, because that's all a part of it. That's exactly what we're looking for. Naturally, again, as I remember saying in a recent video, you have to filter everything I'm saying through this dog, this case. I have to remain adaptable, so that every case I go to, it's given a, if you like, a bespoke solution. Now, very often within that bespoke solution, there will be elements that come up which are commonly used. Using a house lead or a house line in the home is very, very common. Okay, but how we use it and the little nuances around it are worth thinking about. But just please be aware that this is not the approach, because there isn't really much of a thing as an individual approach. It's a total approach. It is the approach used in this case. And that's the beauty of working one-to-one with customers, that we can give them individualized advice, which is always, much more effective than a general do this and see how you get on. Okay, so what else do we have here? We were also using the fixing point method. That is simply placing, with dogs of this size, we can normally place a lead under the foot of a sofa, for example, and near that sofa we could have the bed. So the evening drill for this dog coming into the house was the dog being sent onto his bed. He, less and less now, by the way, but in the very beginning, he was then being clipped up onto a lead. And so he was loose. He could stand up, turn around, lie back down again, but he was fixed to that point. So what he wouldn't be able to do is to rush at anybody or to make a fuss or a scene. Okay, and having that confidence in the household made a big deal also. So I think also the whole family are feeling much more in accordance with each other. We've got that coming together where everybody's doing it on a similar level. That's another beauty of my visits, and that together in cooperation we can put together a plan that we're all there. I'm making little notes as I go, and then I put that into a mini report when I come back to the office. So we're discussing it there and then. I'm making little notes. It's then backed up in a mini report, and then the owner diligently, or the family, apply those points over the coming weeks. So I first saw this couple on the family on the 18th of February. So that is more like 7 weeks, which is a bit longer than normal, but that's a good space in between. So there you have it. This is a case we both agreed that is now essentially resolved. There was some emphasis. I spent some time with the young lad in the living room with me and the mum, and that we were discussing what has gone well and what he needs to continue to do for ongoing improvements, and to solidify, to bring it from improvement, like bringing up the ramp of improvement. Is all very well getting up here, but then of course we need to stay here, don't we? And if in this case we're at a 7.5, well, we want to go up off the page and keep pressing towards a 9 point something. I think that would be very doable. And so what I normally do now is diary to speak to the owner again in about a month's time. So this idea of ongoing support, not just coming in, dishing out advice and then going on to the next job. It's about slowing it down, talking with you, the owner, in more detail, so that I have a good, clear understanding of what the issue is. We agree together a plan of action that is doable and achievable. It's free from anything that you or the dog would in essence not like. So we're always being ethical in our approach. There you go. So I am a very pleased boy today.
So happy. That's just brilliant.
As I go on in the profession, I'm approaching 25 years, as I keep telling everybody. I seem to be a bit conscious of it, I think. But it's like anything, the more you do of it, the better you get at it. And I've had the privilege of doing a great deal of these consultations over the years. And it is that experience that I'm leaning on. I never read up. Perhaps I should, but I never read up on behaviors before I go and see something. If I haven't got it now, I'm never going to get it. But I do have, I believe, a solid foundation towards just looking at issues, putting together simple plans, and giving them the owners and the family support through the process. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for tuning in. Until next time, bye for now.
Oh, I'm so happy.